Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to talk about a very common problem with GM 1500s. This is a GM C1500 all-wheel drive. As we open the hood, we can see it's got a big old 5.3 liter V8 engine. Actually, they're great engines, but they got one big problem. They have that stupid cylinder deactivation system, and it's been proven that it leads to excessive wear in the engine. The cylinders that get deactivated aren't lubricated correctly, and it leads to internal expensive wear that a normal V8 engine would never have. Now, my customer here just bought this used. He likes the truck, but he wants a truck with a big V8 engine. He says, I don't want a truck that runs on 4 cylinders, sometimes 6 and sometimes 8. I like the power. And I gotta say, it's a beautiful truck, got a big old bed, and it can certainly tow a lot. But anyone in their right mind realizes if you're gonna tow heavyweight, carry a lot of weight in the bed, you're not gonna get very good gas mileage with any vehicle, especially a gasoline. You should go diesel if you're going to do that. Having one that goes 8-cylinder, 6.4, it's stupid for a vehicle you're going to pull stuff with. I mean, the only dumber thing I can think of is that new 4-cylinder engine that they're putting in the 1500s. And yeah, theoretically it puts out 300-something horsepower. But when you load them down, they get horrible gas mileage, and they just aren't that great at pulling. They don't have the torque. You know why they made V8 engines? That V8 engine configuration has a lot of torque for pulling stuff. And of course, it's a big, heavy truck. It's going to get crappy gas mileage. All trucks do in the real world. Don't believe these rating systems that they give you the federal estimated mileage. The government doesn't even test hardly, and I think they test like 18% of them. The rest, they just go by the data the companies give them. So it's not believable in many cases. To me, the cylinder deactivation is just a stopgap measure to get better gas mileage. You're never going to get great gas mileage on one of these things. Even with the system, the thing gets like 19 miles a gallon on a highway. Doesn't make all that much difference if you're just cruising in a straight V8. Now, this particular one just purchased, there's a little bit left on the warranty. So the customer is going to leave that aspect alone for the time being. But he figures when it's out of warranty, he's going to take it to a professional tuner who's going to deactivate the cylinder deactivation. He's going to deactivate the deactivation. And I think that's a smart move. But take my advice, only have a real pro do it. They do it right. So the system doesn't come on anymore, you'll be happier. There's kits you can buy, but you never know. You know, some of these Chinese-made kits are a little iffy, but that at least can be bypassed easily by a pro. People have been doing it for years. The other problem these 1500s and L4 is more insidious, and that has to do with what's going on under the truck. The automatic transmission right there. This particular one is a 6-speed automatic transmission. There's also an 8-speed. The 8-speed actually has more problems than the 6-speeds generally. But this one, shifting kind of weird, even though it only has 35,000 miles on it. That's under warranty, so he took it to a GMC dealer, and they theoretically road tested for half an hour and said, oh, we can't find anything wrong, and gave it back to him. So, we're going to do a real analysis of this and see what the truth is. We'll plug in my scan tool. We'll go to diagnostics, GM, GMC, same company. Monte Carlo, we'll do automatic selection, read. One thing about these new ones, at least, they think pretty fast. See, we don't have much of a time lag here. We got the automatic 6-speed. Here we go with diagnosis. We'll do an auto scan. All right, now, it's got codes for the radio, but who even cares about that? And HVAC, so it doesn't show any codes for the transmission. Now, that particularly doesn't shock me because GM kind of cheats on these things, and they make the parameters for the transmission shifting to be acceptable at such a wide range that they don't trip any codes, because even though you feel it's shifting weird, well, the computer says, well, that's not 35% too bad, so we'll accept that it won't trip a code. So we're going to look at live data instead. And here we go. We'll check the shift first. Oh, be quiet, you stupid thing. I hate seatbelt systems that warn you. Well, in this part, everything's pretty much okay. I don't see any faults. There's nothing odd. So we'll go back to the next step. Check the solenoid valves. And as we scroll through, there's no particular problems. Other than the charging voltage is a little bit high. It's 14.7, 14.8. So later we're going to check that. Now we're looking at further data, and we can see here the torque converter slip speed. Now it's in park, and it's a little bit off. It shouldn't be doing anything since it's in park. It should be more or less 0. And you can see it's going 15, 17. Sometimes it even goes into negative figures. Let's see what happens if you rev it up. See, as you rev it up, it gets more normal. 3, 7, 4. Now it went negative for a second. This is in park. Let's see what happens if you put it in drive. Now it's staying around 500, which is pretty normal. We're gonna watch the shift time as we drive. The good road test will analyze all this data. I'm watching the data as it's shifting. Sometimes it's 0.45 a second. The 3 to 4 was now 0.18. It shifted a little better that time. We'll start all over again. All right, now let's watch the shifts. Shifting a little faster now. 35. They're all 35. 18, it was faster because he slowed down and sped up. The shift times aren't bad. You can see the 5 to 6 shift is really fast. 0.08 seconds. Which doesn't surprise me because you're already rolling and it's generally the last gears that wear the least. All right, now we're gonna go 0 to 65. Here we go, and we'll see what the shift times are like. 0.4, 0.3, 0.2. See, the higher we're going, the better it's shifting. 4 to 5 is 0.28. 5 to 6 is 0.18. You can see the longest was 1 to 2. Now, the computer adapts these things as you're driving. All these adaptations can be radically changed by changing the computer software. And expert transmission guys and tuners, they can do that and set it up to the way you like. The only thing you gotta worry about is if there's any internal wear. Now, this thing's only got 35,000 miles, so I'm assuming there's not too much internal wear. And if the dealer isn't gonna do anything about the way it's got a little clunk and stuff, my next advice is have a pro tune the transmission, because that could get rid of any of the clunking problems because of the software that's in it now. You can go more aggressive, less aggressive, and the tuner can set it up the way you want. Now here the problem is, we got the dual problems. This is why you can only have a pro mess with these things, because it's always shifting gears to try to get the best gas mileage, but it's also messing with the engine, sometimes turning some cylinders on and off. We're gonna find a hill and test it going uphill. Okay, now we're going uphill. I felt it jiggle. It definitely jiggled. There's also a tiny clunk when you let off the gas. Well, unfortunately, the shafts on these GM products are often sloppy and have weak yokes in them. And so they get a little bit of play in them, and when you take your foot off the gas, that's reverse torque, and you can hear it and feel it in this every once in a while, especially if you're going uphill and let go. Now, some guys that are fanatic enough, they'll take them apart and they'll re-grease them, and then they find 10, 15,000 miles later, the clunk comes back and then they re-grease them again. It isn't really gonna hurt anything, but it is annoying if you just bought a car with 35,000 miles and it doesn't. Now, all this was in two-wheel drive. Now we put it in four-wheel drive. See if there's any difference. I can hear the four-wheel drive humming. You can see it's still kind of shifting. Not all that different. First to second takes the longest, and they kind of gradually get less. Here we go. We're going down. We'll go up the hill and we'll take our foot off the gas, and we'll see if we hear that same clunk. Didn't really feel anything. Aha! 35,000 miles. It shouldn't have been doing it, and that kind of shows me that I see this in a lot when they're older. Is that four-wheel drive, you can turn it on and off. This four-wheel drive system that it has, when we're only using the rear, the front is just floating. That's when I heard the clunk. Since there's really not much torque on it and it's just floating along, that kind of tells me it's being strained. The front-wheel drive part of the four-wheel drive is making a little bit of noise, which I often see in these things, even brand new. Now, as you can see, it's not horrible, but it's annoying to somebody who has a vehicle with 35,000 miles on it. It's still under warranty, that they're not going to do anything about it. I know if he goes back, they're still not going to do anything about it. Torque converter's a little weak, but it's not outrageous. Probably the yokes have too much play in them, and they make the clunking noise when you let go, because when you let go, you have reverse torque. And then when there's reverse torque, if there's too much slack in the yokes, you get a little clunk. No big deal, but it's annoying that you pay this kind of money for a vehicle, and with that small amount of mileage, it's got clunks and thumps. From my experience with these things, the 1500s, you're generally going to get maybe 140 to 150,000 miles out of the transmission. If they want to keep the vehicle, get a factory rebuilt transmission, it could go another 140, 150,000 miles. It's always going to have little noises, jiggles and stuff because of this modern 6-speed. And if you think this is bad, get in an 8-speed version of these things, because most of these have 8 speeds, and nobody knows exactly how long those things are going to last. From my experience, they don't even last 150,000 miles before they actually break down. From my experience with these, I don't think it's ever going to just break and stop working. Make more clunking noises. And some guys that are absolute fanatics, like I said, they'll take the shafts off of the entire four-wheel drive system. They'll grease them with heavy grease, put them back on, and the noise goes away for a while until the grease wears off, and then they do that clunking when you take your foot off the gas. But really, when you buy a vehicle like this, nice, beautiful looking vehicle, you don't expect to have problems like that. Getting rid of the cylinder deactivation, no big deal, just pay a pro to do it. You can turn it off on the vehicle so that it doesn't go into 6th gear, but then every time that you're driving it, you got to keep resetting it, and then it won't go into 6th gear. That's when you're towing. It'll only go up to 5th gear. I mean, what's the point of having an automatic transmission with 6 speeds? You can't use all 6 if you want to do the cylinder deactivation shut-off. Just, as I say, it's a half-assed way to get better gas mileage. I think it's stupid. They should have never made it in the first place. I mean, come on now, GM. People want a big truck, they buy a big truck. Don't tune the engine down. And there goes a screaming Ford diesel as I talk. You want to mess around with V6 engines, 4-cylinder engines, go ahead. But if somebody wants a truck, the V8 engine, give them a truck with a V8 engine. Not some ridiculous system. And don't keep adding gear after gear onto the transmission, and then they don't really shift right because they might have not been designed right, the software's not right, and then they say, oh, we can fix it with the software, and sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. There's so much levels of complexity on it that it even confuses them, and they don't know exactly what to do because they got to get good gas mileage for the ratings, EPA stuff, but the customers still want power and smoothness. Trying to balance all that with these crazy high-tech systems, it's often an impossible task. So what's going to happen with this? To first deactivate the cylinder deactivation, and then if you're still getting the clunking, have a transmission guy set the shifts because he doesn't like how it shifts too fast and then it downshifts, and if he's got to hurry up, it's got to downshift again another gear. Any pro transmission guy can set it anywhere you want. They have various graphs, various software. They can put them in. You can try it. If you don't like it, they can fiddle with them. They're made that they can be adjusted. Find a guy who knows what he's doing. A real transmission pro. He does a good job. Tell your friends about him. Because if you go to the dealer, they're not going to mess with that stuff. They're going to say, oh, that's anti-pollution equipment. You'll ruin your warranty. Well, they weren't made to do that. You can do anything you want with them. As long as the pros know what they're doing, you get a little worse gas mileage if it shifts later. But you get more pickup. And that's what most people want in a V8. They're not buying them to be gas mileage, and if you tow and pull weight, it doesn't matter what kind of setup it has, it's still going to get low gas mileage. Gasoline engines were not made for towing heavy objects. You're going to tow heavy objects and you want decent gas mileage, get a diesel engine, not a gasoline one. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.